Okay, so the idea behind having a synchronous session with you guys is so that we can delve a little bit more into accounting, mainly the practical aspects of accounting, okay? Because as you've seen, accounting's main purpose is that we register everything that goes on financially in a financial entity, be it a company, a personal financial entity. You guys eventually will be hiring an accountant, or if you're a bit crazy like me, you'll be doing your own accounting. My suggestion is hire an accountant unless you're a little bit well versed in the subjects. And the objective of the session is not that you become accountants or that you are able to do all your accounting. It's just that so that you understand what goes on behind this, and that when eventually you do hire an accountant, you know what's going on, so that you can grasp and understand what your accountant is doing for you. So for that, first, I've prepared a really small presentation that's going to complement what we've been seeing in class for the last few weeks. Now, something that's very important for you guys to understand is this concept that in economy, there's a duality to everything, okay? That means it's kind of like what Lavoisier said, that matter is not created or destructed, it is simply transformed. Same thing applies to economy. Everything that is created in a company has to come from somewhere, okay? So for instance, if my company generates 10,000 pesos today, that money came from somewhere. If I bought furniture, the money to buy that came from somewhere. And all that has to be registered, okay? So if we define this, economic duality would be the financial structure of an economic entity. This entity is made of resources which are made available to it in order to achieve its goal or its purpose. And those resources are going to allow it to do so. Now, these resources can be from the company. I mean, if I'm the owner, I could be putting up my own resources, or other people can be giving me those resources. So, for instance, if I do a public auction for stock in my company and I get investors to buy stock in my company, that money, it belongs to other people. They're basically lending me their money so I can fund my company. And as my company grows, their stock will grow in value. And eventually, if they decide to sell their stocks, I have to pay those investors back. That's actually what happens when you buy and sell stock. You become an investor and you're basically lending your money to someone else so that they can invest it and create or grow a company. So how this works, I'm sorry, my computer is not wanting to change. Okay, so how this works is we have this entity right here at the top. This would be the company, and now this entity has rights and has obligations, okay? So it has the right to sell stock, it has the right to sell a product or service, but for instance, it has certain obligations, and I'm sorry for the typo, I do need to fix that. It should say obligations, not it's okay. What are some obligations? So for instance, for us in the healthcare department, we have the right to offer our services. So I can give a consultation to a patient, but I have an obligation to report to the economic or to the tax entity how much I receive from that. Someone opened their mic. Please try to keep the mics closed, guys. Now, in this economic duality, I will have certain resources that I must know where they came from and how I applied them. And that is the way as to how economic duality is proven in accounting. Now, there is a way to register, because remember, registering is, after all, the first and most important objective of accounting. And what we do, in essence, is we use a certain kind of instrument that are called T accounts, okay? Now, T accounts in Spanish are called esquemas de mayor o cuentas T. Now, the name is quite ingenious because, as you can see, it actually has the shape of a T. Now, for ages, this has been used for accounting. As of the last couple decades, it's actually not used in common practice because it's not practical anymore. If you see the accountant books for a big company, say Coca-Cola, if they did their accounting in T accounts, it would be hell for whoever's doing it. I mean, it would be impossible for them to follow up because these big companies have to keep accounting books day by day, and just to follow everything would be impossible. But in the sake of understanding how this all works, it's actually quite a good list. And no, I'm not taking a list for those of you that are mentioning it in the group. I was never going to do that. Now, how T accounts work is you have a certain number or an unlimited number of accounts that you can name. So, for instance, all the money that comes into a company usually goes into a bank. So that accounting T count can be called, and I'm sorry for my terrible letter, I'm trying to do my best with the mouse here. It could be called banks. And each side of the T account has a name. So the left side of the T account is going to be called the credit side, and the right side is going to be called the debit side. Once again, I'm going to explain it again in Spanish, okay? Sorry about that. Todas las cuentas o todos los esquemas de mayor se refieren a cuentas contables. Las cuentas contables son básicamente infinitas. Hay un cierto número de cuentas contables que podemos utilizar, que están determinadas por entidades regulatorias de contabilidad. Pero para fines prácticos, si ustedes quieren hacer una cuenta de, qué sé yo, libros, pues pueden hacer una cuenta contable de libros y registrar el valor de los libros. El nombre de la cuenta siempre va a ir en la parte superior del esquema de mayor, en este caso banks, que sería bancos, que es donde regularmente ponemos el efectivo de una empresa o una compañía. Y cada lado del esquema de mayor lleva un nombre. El lado izquierdo es el lado del crédito y el lado derecho es el lado del débito, es el deber y el haber. Normalmente hablamos de activos y pasivos o lo que está y no está, dependiendo de la dualidad económica, ¿okay? Dependiendo de si el dinero entra o sale, o incluso si es algo que debo. Entonces, for instance, if we're talking about an asset, for instance, I buy a car, the value of the car, let's say I buy, I don't know, 500,000 cars. So the value of that car would go here. But I paid it in full, so the money has to go out. And this value will go into another account on this side. You'll be seeing it in a moment, okay? We'll do this in the practical Excel so that it's not that complicated for you guys. But the main idea is T accounts are going to help us represent economic duality. And every time you register in a T account what is called an accounting statement, you have to register in both sides of a T account in different T accounts, okay? Like I'll be showing you in a minute. What this is going to help us is that in the end, this is going to help us do a balance sheet, which is in essence is also a statement of financial position. Now, this is a document that is going to be like kind of a summary of all those T accounts and their final value for a given time. So for instance, the example that you're seeing right now and on screen refers to this company called Teddy Fab, and this is their accounting statement for December 31st, 2100. Now, for the end of December of 2100, this company had a certain value in assets, had a certain value in property, in land, in buildings, in equipment, in other assets, but it also has liabilities. So it owes money, for instance. So there's account payables notes payables, and so it has a certain amount of liabilities. And then there's the shareholders' equity. Now, the shareholders' equity literally means investors who gave up the money. So, for instance, if we have common stock, it usually means to money that's paid in by investors, etc., etc. And this is going to help us with a certain rule in accounting that will show us or prove us economic duality. And it's a very simple mathematical formula. The assets, the value, total value of the assets of a company should be equal to the value of its liabilities added to the result of the shareholders' equity plus or minus the results for the period. Now, results for the period, it is literally a big formula. We're not going to see it right now, but the instance is results for the period is going to show us how much money you made. So if I sell, I sell Legos, how much money am I making from selling those Legos? Because it's not just selling the Lego set, it's how much it cost me to produce it, to store it, to actually sell it, promote it. And when I take all of that into consideration, maybe the set costs $100, but after that, my final value or what I made from it is, say, $10. It's 10%. I don't know. I don't know how much Lego makes out of every set, but that will be the result for the period, okay? This, in turn, is going to help us do something called a comprehensive income statement. Now, this is usually for profit-making entities, okay? So you're not going to do this as a physical person. We'll be talking next week about physical and moral persons. Don't worry, you'll understand that come next week. But physical entities usually don't do this, but profit-making entities do, because this is a document that is literally going to show those investors how their money was spent and how much profit they made. And it usually looks like this. So this is Bramble Companies, and this is their statement for the year of December 31st. Now, what you're seeing here, the top part, all those numbers would be those results for the period. So in the end, for instance, they sold $385,700. But after taking into account sales returns, costs of goods, inventory, income, taxes, they actually only made $121,653. And that is what should be shared amongst the investors. And usually some companies will share that profit among investors and among their workers. In Mexico, for instance, private companies are obliged by law to share part of their net income with their workers. And this is usually done in the months of May and April. And in Spanish, it's called reparto de utilidades. So if you've ever heard about reparto de utilidades, that's what it means to. The worker has a right in our country to an amount or percentage of the net income of a company. Any questions until here? Okay. Now let me just put up my Excel, because now we're going to do an example of how this all works. Okay. There it is. So you should be seeing an Excel now, okay? I've gone ahead and prepared some basic T accounts, which is what you can see here on the left side. Can you just confirm that you're seeing my screen again? It's not showing that red box around it. Good, thank you. It's just that I switched computers and the new computer is not showing the red box that it usually shows, so I was just confused. Okay, so I'm gonna be sending you right now in the chat, I hope this works, a document which you can use to follow what I'm about to show you, the example that we're going to do. Now, this Word document has 5 accounting statements that we're going to transform into accounting registries, and then we're going to prove the economic duality of this company which we're going to lovingly call Anahuac books, okay? So the first statement, if you open up your Word document, and for those of you who are actually listening to the recording, I'll be uploading this document to Brightspace, so it'll be available for you guys. The first accounting statement says, the company Anahuac Books is established with a share capital of 5 million Mexican pesos, and it's distributed as follows. Cash, 3 million Mexican pesos. Terrain or land, 500 Mexican pesos. A building, which is worth 1 million Mexican pesos. Some books, because, well, we are going to sell books. But as you can see, we're not talking if there are 10, 50, 5,000 books. We're talking in value. So the value of this book is 350,000 Mexican pesos. And vehicles, or I guess a vehicle, because it's worth 150,000 Mexican pesos, but a vehicle that is worth that. Now we have to translate this into something tangible in our T accounts. So first up, we're talking about shareholders' equity. So there's investors putting their money here. So we'll start with an account, which is going to be called shareholders' equity. Now, if you remember from our formula, shareholders' equity will go always on the right side of our T accounts. So that means that the money that they gave us will be on the right side of their T account. Now, and this is very important, whenever you register in a T account any movement, you have to reference it to the accounting statement. Otherwise, the person who is reading the T accounts and has the accounting statements next to them is not going to be able to properly understand what's going on because you're going to get lost. So remember, you always need your T accounts, your accounting statements, and they have to be duly registered or referenced. So in this case, those 5 million from the shareholders' equity become our first registry. Now we have to put all that money that we got on the other side of the T accounts in order to prove this economic duality. So first up, we have that cash. We said it was 3 million Mexican pesos. So we'll open a bank's account and we'll register those 3 million Mexican pesos, and that is part of our first accounting statement. We got some land, and they told us it was worth 500,000 Mexican pesos. So we'll register that, and we'll also reference it so that we don't get lost when we revise this. On top of that land, there's a building, and they told us that it was worth 1 million Mexican pesos. So we'll register that over here. And vehicle, or vehicles in this case, because we can eventually buy more, which we know is worth 150,000, and I'm missing the books. Now, in this case, and I told you earlier, you can name the account whatever you want, but for instance, when we're selling something, books, Legos, computers, anything, we'll usually call that account warehouse because it has to be stored somewhere, and it'll usually be in a warehouse. And that's where we put the value of our stock. So in this case, we'll be putting here those 350,000 Mexican pesos. So we have the shareholders to equity total value registered. We have the banks, the land, the building, the books, and the vehicle. So that will finish us registering that first part of the movement. Now, if you want to go along the way checking that you're actually proving economic duality, it's very simple. You just add up what you did. So if the investors gave us 5 million pesos, that means that everything else should be worth 5 million. Now, this is a small Excel trick, but if you press Control, or if you're using a Mac, the Command key, and then click on every individual cell, it'll do the math for you. And there you can see it. It adds up to 5 million Mexican pesos. So that means that first accounting statement is properly registered, and we have proven with this statement that it has economic duality. So we can move on to the second one. Now, when any company, and this is because we're establishing a company, so we have to register the company. Now, in Mexico, when that happens, you have to have a company charter, which is a document that states that you founded the company, okay? And you do that with a notary. So the second statement, as you can see, says, payment is transferred to public notary number 135, Licenciado Roman Tejeda, in the amount of 20,000 Mexican pesos for the company charter, as well as 50,000 Mexican pesos for the corresponding procedures for registering the company. So the document is going to cost us 20,000, and his fee is more than double that. It's 50,000. Maybe we should have chosen another public notary, but what the heck? That's the guy we went with. Okay, so first up, we have to pay this guy, okay? And it doesn't clearly state it, but let's consider that we're going to pay him in cash. So here you have two options, guys. You can, since it's all going to come from the same account and go to the same account, you can either divide it, be it you can take out the 20,000 from the document and the 50,000 from the fee, or you can add it up because it's all part of the same accounting statement, and it's going to go to the same account. So I'm going to take out those 70,000 Mexican pesos from the account, and since I'm deducting them, I'm taking them out from my bank to pay them to someone. It has to go on the right side. It's money that's going outside of the company, and it's going to go somewhere else. And since I'm going to obtain something in return, I'm going to open a new key account, which is going to be called notaries. So whenever I do any procedure or anything with a notary, I'll be able to register here whatever it is we'll be doing. So again, you can do it in two parts, which is place the 20,000 and place the 50,000. Of course, you would have to reference both movements, or for the sake of simplicity, which is what I would recommend, you can place the 70,000. And that's our second accounting statement. It's actually that simple. It's actually that quick. And in this case, we don't have to add up because it's only two different accounts where I have to register. So I know that it is dutifully registered and that economic duality has been proven with the second statement. Let's go to the third one. Now, third one says that we purchase bookshelves to show our products, and we pay 273,000 in cash. So, of course, we need to buy some furniture, else where are we going to present everything we buy? So in this case, we're going to open an account, furniture. It's going to be called furniture. Now, those bookshelves are an asset. There's something tangible that's going to be part of our company. So that value has to go on the left side because they're an asset. In this case, they told us that the value is 273,000. And we reference it as the third accounting statement. And in this case, they did tell us that we paid in cash. So we have to take the money outside from the bank. We have to pay. And there we go. We finished with our third accounting statement. Let's go to the fourth one. Now, it says that we purchased 3 cash registers for 72,000 each, and we pay with credit. Okay, so if we pay with credit, we're going to leave the bank's account on its own because it's not money that we're going to be putting up front. And we're going to open another account that is going to be called, sorry about that, accounts payable, or accounts to settle. In Spanish, it would be called cuentas por pagar. It's really that simple. Now, since those cash registers actually qualify as furniture as well, we're going to place them here. Now, again, you could actually place the 72,000 from each register, but for the sake of simplicity, I mean, Excel does it for us. Let's just place 72,000 multiplied times 3. The total value is 216,000, and that's my fourth accounting statement. Now, since this is money that I'm going to owe to someone in accounts payable, it's going to go on the right side of my T account. So those 216,000 is going to go on the right side of my T account. I register as the fourth accounting statement, and that would end the fourth accounting statement of this exercise. Now, if you're following with the fifth, you'll notice that there's no statement regarding any payments. But eventually, if I were to make a payment, say that I paid in cash, I don't know, 10,000 pesos of what I owe the cash register guy, I would take the money from the bank, and then I would deduct from account payables, because that credit is going to go down in its total value of how much I owe, but money has to come from somewhere, just so that you have it in mind in case you ever find yourself with an exercise that requires you to register some payment to a credit. Let's go to our fifth accounting statement. Now, it says that on our first week, we sell 23,000 pesos worth of books. Now, those books have to come from somewhere. So that stock that we have, so we have to take it outside of the warehouse because, well, we're giving it to a customer. So we're going to transfer the value. But the money has to go somewhere because, after all, they are paying us. So money has to go in the bank. And that's our fifth accounting statement. That's our fifth. That's the last one for the example. So that would be it for this first part of the exercise. Once you have finished with all the accounting statements that you're given for a period of time, now usually we'll do this, or companies will close out accounts on a monthly basis. Sometimes they'll do it daily, weekly, monthly. I don't think I've ever seen any company do it bi-monthly. We have to do something that is called closing out the T accounts. What this means is we're gonna add and deduct values in order to obtain how much each account is worth at the end of the period of time. So, for instance, shareholders' equity had no movement throughout the rest of the period, so those 5 million are still there. It's worth that. Banks, it's where it gets interesting. So we have 3 million that we got in the beginning. Into the bank account of 3,023,000. But we took money from that. We paid the notary and we bought those racks so we could show off our bucks. So we took out of that bank account 343,000 Mexican pesos. What comes next is very simple. Since I know that if I take the positive value and deduct what I took out, I'm going to end up with a green number, or there's still going to be cash there. We're not going to owe money to the bank. What we'll do is we'll take the value of the money we took into the account and we'll deduct what we took from the account, and it leaves us with a final tally of 2,680,000 Mexican pesos, which will be our final value for the bank account for this period, which was, what did I say? But let's say it's October 2023. Land, we'll close it out like that because, again, we didn't buy any more land. We didn't buy or build any more building. Same goes for vehicle, for notaries, and the account payable, since we just got the credit and we didn't pay up anything because, well, we usually start paying next month. I know, let's put this in red. We can close those accounts. Now, the last two accounts that we're missing to close, and for that, let me just put this one here and this one here, are going to be warehouse and furniture. Now, again, it's as simple as adding up all the values because I didn't take anything out from here. So furniture, my final tally would be 489,000. And in warehouse, we did take out sum. We took out the 23. So we'll deduct the 23,000 from the 350, and we'll have a positive value of 327,000. And with that, we finished part 2 of the exercise. We now go with part 3 and the last part of these kind of exercises, which is the balance sheet. And this is actually probably the simplest and the quickest one. So the balance sheet, as you saw earlier, is made up of 2 parts. It's made up of assets. It's made up of liabilities. And we have shareholders' equity, because that's what goes on our right side. And now just let me separate this. There we go. And let's put one here for the final tally and the lower edge. There you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the final values that we have from our T accounts and transfer them into our balance sheet. So we'll have banks, we'll have land, we'll have building, we'll have vehicles, we'll have warehouse. Oops. Okay, so I need to take this one down. I actually placed it way too high. Okay, warehouse, we'll have notaries, furniture, and we'll have furniture. Now in liabilities, we'll only take accounts payable and shareholders' equity. Well, we just have shareholders' equity, so we can leave it like that. Now we'll take this value. Let's place our edges just for the sake of keeping everything as neat and clean as possible. And we'll transfer the values. So banks, we know that our final tally was the 2,680,000, sorry. Land, it's the $500,000. The building, which is worth $1 million. Vehicles, which are worth 150,000, etc., etc. You just transfer the final values that you have for the period in each account. Okay, you do the same for accounts payable, and you do the same for shareholders' equity. I didn't plus. Okay, there you go. Now to finish this up, we have to prove this economic duality. So we'll add up the total value of all the accounts in the left side, in the asset side, and it tells us that the value is 5,216,000. Now this grew from the original 5 million because we purchased something in credit. So we have more assets now, which are worth those 260,000 in difference, which came from that credit. And if we add up the 216 plus the 5 million, you see that the value is exactly the same, which means that our accounting exercise was performed properly. There's no mistakes in the registry, and in the case of the activity that you will be doing for this week, you can turn it in without any issues. This is what you have to do, guys. Take it easy. I know it's difficult to understand, especially because, well, you're going through math school. You're not going through economics or administration. But again, it's important that you understand how this works. The exercise that you're going to find available in Brightspace is going to be for you to do exactly this that I've worked here, but the accounting statements are going to be different. Take it slow, take your time, and if you have questions while you're doing it, please send me a message. It's going to be tough. Try to make it so that the numbers match in the end. If the numbers don't match in the end, something's wrong with your registry. If that happens, my suggestion is go back to the beginning and go accounting statement by accounting statement until you find the mistake. In this case, it's going to be quick and simple because the exercise is made up of 5 accounting statements, just like we just did. But in real life, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of accounting statements. So it tends to become more difficult in the long run, okay? Why this had to be synchronous is because this is the moment for you to tell me if you have any questions about what we just saw, about the exercise, about what you have to do. Okay, so I take it at this time that everything's clear, that you're good to go with your exercise for this week, which as soon as I close this meeting, I'm going to make available for you guys. Now, since usually we open up the activities on Monday and you deliver them on Saturday, and it's 2 days after that, I'm going to extend the time frame for you to deliver your exercise until Monday of next week, which is the 16th. Again, time limit is just a minute before midnight. My suggestion is, because this is probably the toughest activity of the semester, given that it's math and it's something completely new. And that's because the one from next week, it's going to seem confusing, but it's actually simpler because once you understand this, the one from next week is going to be way simpler. So my suggestion is don't leave this until Monday. Start working on it today, tomorrow, your free times. You might get it on your first try. You might get it on your 10th. But my suggestion is don't give up. Try to make the numbers match. They do match. I have this solved. Once the window closes on Monday, on Tuesday, throughout the day, I don't want to commit to a time frame because you guys know I'm usually quite busy throughout the day, but throughout Tuesday, either myself or Dr. Sofia is going to open for you a module with a video that I've recorded previously where I go step by step in the correct solution for the exercise. That is because when we grade your exercise, we're just going to strictly go to what is shown there, because if we go one by one, we'll never finish writing down where the mistakes were. We would never finish. So when we evaluate this exercise, if your grade is not 10, which I hope you all guys get 10, you're just going to find a message that please refer to the correct solution of the exercise video in order to further clarify where you might have gone wrong. But if you have questions still after that, again, you can let me or you can let Dr. Sofia know. We'll gladly help you out, guys. And that's it. So just like I promised, we actually finished 20 minutes before the hour. It was going to be quick and easy. I really do hope this is clear. And you're free, guys. I'm giving you back 20 minutes of your life. Thank you for being here. And I'm at your service. Have a great night.
Thank you.